even upper-class Jews, post-exile, have their families cast away from them. Ezra records it's actually a really tragic scene in the Bible because, as Ezra 9 puts it, that the holy seed has mixed itself with the people of the land and that they can't possibly have that. And even Jesus, who, much later, who praised the Canaanite woman as having more faith than a lot of Israelites, that passage began with him not even wanting to address her because she was a dog.
Right.
So to claim that there's no record of racism here, that this is not ethnically motivated, would be laughable if it wasn't such a tragic situation.
Not to be too current event bound, but does anybody think that being steeped in texts like this might maybe predispose people to, even in current days, like if you're settling on somebody else's land, for example, that you might want to consider them ethnically impure and therefore your actions are justified?
Well, the Crusaders sure referred to the Canaanite annihilation, and I was reading just recently about a lot of the rhetoric of manifest destiny and when
settlers pushed the Indians out.
Settlers pushed the Native Americans out. They viewed a lot of the plagues, they viewed a lot of the diseases that were rampant in the Native American populations as just like the plagues that God sent to finish the Canaanites off. Another kind of weird attempt to avoid calling this a genocide. Here's a passage at the end of Joshua. It says, "Be careful," this is from Joshua 23, 11 through 13. "Be very careful, therefore, to love your Lord your God, for if you turn back and you join the survivors of these nations left here among you and intermarry them, so that you marry their women and they yours, know assuredly that the Lord your God will not continue to drive out these nations before you, but they shall be a snare and a trap for you and a scourge on all sides, and thorns in your eyes until you perish from this good land that the Lord has given you." Which Copan, for some strange reasons, evokes this as proof that they were not genocidal. Because apparently because it says some people were left.
Oh, so there are some of them left. So therefore, yeah.
And more specifically, it points
out... It's only genocide if you finish the job.
And more specifically, it says here, God will not continue to drive out these nations. Copan says, quote, "Driving out or dispossessing is different from wiping out or destroying. Utter annihilation wasn't intended, and escaping from the land was encouraged." So his idea is, what the Israelites are really trying to do is just, attack a few cities, and then everybody else will get scared and they'll leave. And God knew this would be a really long process. Except what he ignores is some of the verses that he's quoted earlier, actually, the very next verse, Deuteronomy 7:20 says that any survivors or fugitives, God is going to finish off with a plague. So the passage itself is not ambiguous about this at all. It's not driving them out does not have this notion of just trying to get them to relocate. Driving them out is a way to destroy their culture.
Get rid of them so God can kill them personally.
Yeah, sure, a few are going to survive, but you're getting rid of them as a people. Mm-hmm. And that's the goal. So I'm getting tired of this already, but real quick, let's hit some of these other points. His claim that the Israelites, for the most part, were not killing women, children, and babies, but combatants only, I think is one of the most dishonest arguments in this piece. But it's probably one of the most important ones, too. That's really the only way he can get away with whitewashing this, is to get around this uncomfortable
fact. If it's a war and you're killing combatants, then
that makes it a slightly different deal. It still doesn't justify killing every single soldier, taking no prisoners, but still.
Of course, some of us would argue that it doesn't actually justify killing anyone, but okay.
There's a lot of different things he says, but some of the kickers are that references to men and women, young and old, in the text, don't actually mean men and women, young and old. It's a stock phrase for everyone, And he goes on to say that it doesn't imply anything about the gender or age of the victims. So that's his first attempt to get around this.
So
he doesn't actually really back this up either.
But he hasn't gotten around it at all. He's saying, well, it doesn't literally mean every man and every woman. He means everyone.
Well, what this is doing
here?
is he's trying to open up the option that these were, and that's his next claim, that these were all these were all military fortified cities. Apparently, he thinks the Canaanites were just a race of soldiers,
like the Spartans,
with no families or
right.
anything else.
Right.
Is basically what he's.
So these were all forts instead of cities.
Yeah, they're attacking the forts, and maybe the villages around are going to all flee in dispersion to get away.
Wow.
This is silly because we have plenty of passages throughout the Hebrew Bible that he's clearly aware of, that describe in detail the joys of smashing babies' skulls on rocks,
right.
or ripping open pregnant
They
women.
don't mean babies and pregnant women. They mean soldiers with babies.
Luke and I were talking about a story. I had just read this yesterday. Somehow this little atrocity from Israel's history I've completely missed it with as many times as I've read the Bible. I don't remember this. Read Judges 21. It's a great account of how the Israelites almost annihilate one of their own tribes. The tribe of Benjamin. A woman is raped.
Yeah, the guy's traveling in a foreign land, and a mob shows up at the door and wants to kill him. And so they throw his concubine out to satisfy the crowd, where she's whatever, and then kill.
Almost Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, and so then when they come out in the morning, she's basically there, and he's like, let's go back, and she dies. So he goes back to his group and says, I traveled in this land, and this is the way they treated me, so we need to go get them. So they basically saddle up the posse, go after the other group, and slaughter.
Yeah, they kill so many of the tribe of Benjamin.
As punishment.
A few of the men kind of escape to an encampment that they can protect themselves in. And as the rest of the Israelites are laying siege, they suddenly realize, oh shit, we killed all the women and all the babies. There's no way that the remaining men from the tribe of Benjamin have nobody to breed with. We may have just extinguished one of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Wow.
So you know what they do to fix the situation?
Capture some women somewhere.
They go to a nearby town that was remaining pacifistic throughout this whole conflict, and they wipe out everyone in that village except for the virgins and give their virgins to the Benjamites. Wow. So there's even with their own people, there's no doubt that they are slaughtering
they killed
women
their
and
own
children.
Women and children.
It's not even a contestable thing.
They're not sparing
here.
the Canaanites.
And what's so funny, again, I'm using funny and really loosely here, is that Copan knows this because his third chapter, he devotes 3 chapters to the Canaanite sacrifice. Mm-hmm. His third chapter is essentially, I'm guessing you probably didn't buy any of my previous arguments.
You're right.
His third chapter begins with trying to explain, well, all right, maybe they did kill men, women, and children, but, and I'll quote Copan here, Canaanite women would have participated in immoral and degrading activities. The women might not have been combatants, but they were hardly innocent, and we could add that the elderly Canaanites clearly shared blame in the moral corruption of their culture. Mm. And that God is, as far as the babies are concerned, God is the author of life, and he has a rightful claim on it as his creator. I guess.
What was the point of the other 2 chapters if he was just going to say, God makes life so he can...
Yeah. He says, if any infants and children were killed, they would have entered into the presence of God. Though deprived of an earthly life, these young ones wouldn't have been deprived of the greatest good of enjoying everlasting friendship with God.
Are you serious? This is the same type of crap. We just
Yeah.
talked before about, like, I can remember, like, in history when driving the Native Americans out, that they would, like, declare a village combatants, and when they would shoot everybody down, they'd find, like, women, children, old men. There's nobody there, but they would say, well, the kids could have picked up a rifle soon. Or, the women were.
Well,
pretty,
so
because
for the
this is the Bible they were reading.
So for the Christians listening to this show, how is it that Christians could want to distance themselves from this Norway shooter and have nothing to do with him? That if you feel that way, I feel you should be equally distancing yourself